Good afternoon and welcome along to the RE/MAX Realty Check here on CFCB Expert Advice. And I'm joined today by Dwayne Anstey. How are you doing, Dwayne?
I'm great, Steve. How are you?
Not too bad. And we're here to talk about real estate, of course, as it is the RE/MAX Realty Check. And we're going to start things off today talking about disclosure statements. Now, what exactly is a property disclosure statement?
Steve, a disclosure statement, by definition, is a written statement presented to a potential buyer that lists information that's relevant to a piece of property, whether it's negative or positive. Sellers are obligated to disclose any known defects to a potential buyer by way of it's a 2-page document that we have that we provide with our listing package. It contains things such as zoning, different rights to the property, plumbing issues, roofing issues, structural damage. A property disclosure statement is designed pretty much to protect the buyer against future of issues or regret.
For sure. So if someone had water in their basement, if they disclosed it on the statement, then that basically covers them in case someone finds water in their basement later on, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's disclosed at the beginning, we can deal with it accordingly. Water in the basement is not necessarily, it's an issue that can be fixed.
For sure.
It's something that, if it's disclosed, we can deal with it.
So what other things should be included on a disclosure statement?
Any work or upgrades that has been done on the property should be disclosed, like we said, whether negative or positive. Any renovations that's been done, such as work in a kitchen, bathroom, or any plumbing. With respect to a kitchen, sometimes there's new electrical codes that had to be met, GFIs, electrical terms that I won't get into that.
For sure.
But there are things that have to be done and done properly when renovating particular areas of a home.
And how often do you see properties come available to you guys and they're not up to code? Is that a common thing?
With some older homes, very difficult to say how old, but say more than 25 years old, we've seen electrical panels that are not up to today's standards. And when somebody is getting a mortgage on a home, they need to have insurance. And if they can't get insurance, they can't get a mortgage.
For sure.
So a 60 amp breaker or a 60 amp fuse panel is not up to today's standards. So therefore, it needs to be changed out.
Now, as far as a disclosure statement goes, are these always available?
Property disclosure statements aren't always available. In some cases, a property disclosure statement is not available in instances in which the property is not being sold by the primary resident. If a house has been rented to tenants, the owner can't really confirm or deny the daily maintenance of a property.
For sure.
Property disclosure statements are not a part of listings when being sold as an estate. If there's an executor of a will and an individual passes, that executor can't really speak to the condition of the property.
Now, as far as these disclosure statements go, is there anything else you can think of that should be included on a disclosure statement?
Yeah, any past problems with any pests should be discussed. The existence of pets as well. We've shown homes to people, and as soon as they go in, they say, oh, these people must have a dog because I'm allergic and I can feel the effects of it. That's not necessarily going to, make the home not saleable. It's just knowing what's in the property so that when an agent is going to show the property, they can just let them know, there's a dog here, there's a cat here, there used to be.
For sure.
Some other things can include, neighborhood disputes, any property line disputes. We find that especially in older communities or where the population's a little less and, Uncle Jim sold his property to nephew Joe, and it wasn't really handled legally or properly.
For sure, yeah.
So in some cases, property line disputes become an issue. He might have his fence 2 feet on the other person's property. When the survey gets done, it identifies that. So those things need to be talked about.
Yeah, and I guess in some smaller communities as well, people might not have land deeds and stuff like that. I guess that you must come across that pretty frequently as well. Where the boundaries of this person's property they're not clearly defined by anything. That must be tricky at times, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. It is tricky, and sometimes if it's not brought to the attention of the agent right at the beginning, And, we'd like to give them the advice on how to deal with those things. If it's not brought to our attention, we can't give them the advice. They just want things to go smoothly. They want this property sold, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. But in this case, if they tell us up front that there's a deed that's not registered, or the property was sold and it was done with the justice of the peace and not properly legally, a title search done and property title to the buyer, we can help with that process.
For sure. And as well, getting back to the disclosure statements there, who provides all the information about the property on this disclosure statement?
Well, it's usually the primary resident of the property that discloses it, because they're the only ones that can really speak to the condition of the property. If they had, like I said before, if they had water in the basement and they're not the primary resident, they may never know that happened. So, it's not really fair for them to speak on that.
For sure. Now, what happens if something is not disclosed and there are issues later? I mean, that must happen frequently as well. I mean, not frequently, but every now and again as well.
Well, I feel that this is where the agent comes in to play. The buyer, in most cases, will most likely discover the defect or problem in time. So if something's not disclosed, the buyer moves in, and they discover in the spring they got water in their basement. They'll discover it that way, or this through conversation with neighbors, or if the problem arises again. At that point, there may be a further inspection to determine the seriousness of the problem and how it can be fixed. Whether it's a leaky roof, a leaky foundation, a pest issue, or who knows, a grumpy neighbor.
For sure, yeah.
In some cases, if it can be proven the previous owner purposely did not disclose something that may cause the current owner to have to spend money or causes some other type of problem, legal action is sometimes pursued. We've seen cases where it gets to the point, though, that the owner is seeking legal advice and the previous owner becomes aware of this, and sometimes it's resolved before it ever makes it to a court proceeding.
To court, yeah. Any advice that you have for the listeners out there regarding property disclosure?
Well, from a seller's perspective, always disclose what you know about a property. Disclosing to an agent doesn't mean the property won't sell. In most cases, the agent will help in resolving the issue and make the sale easier. Being fully transparent and honest about the property gives us, as your agent, confidence in you, and that confidence are passed to the buyer. In a lot of cases, negotiating a sale on a property that has an issue can be tough. But if it's known from day one that there's something to be aware of, we can price the home accordingly. In some cases, I've gone out and spoke with contractors, whether it be a plumber, an electrician, or general contractor, to obtain advice or quotations with respect to the issue before listing. So, when I bring a potential buyer in, the homework is done. In some cases, the buyers will come into a property, they'll identify that the electrical, may need to be upgraded, and they'll automatically put a price tag on it. And they'll sometimes use high numbers to, beat the price down.
For sure.
I had one property in particular where it had a 60 amp fuse panel. It needed to be upgraded. So we went ahead and got a quote on it, to completely replace that, upgrade the kitchen electrical and the bathroom electrical. So when the property was being shown, this was disclosed so that it wasn't a surprise. And the quote had already been received. So instead of having a buyer go through the hassle of getting quotes and meeting with different people, electricians, that work was done. So when they're making an offer, that couldn't be used as a negotiating tool to beat the price down. And by the way, the owner of the house had the work done before the possession date. So, it was very simple for the buyer and very simple for the seller as well.
Now, Dwayne, is there anything else you'd like to tell the listeners in closing about property disclosure statements?
Yes. In some cases, a full disclosure can actually help a seller, as it shows a buyer that they're willing to be thorough and upfront during the proceedings. The honest approach can go a long way toward giving buyers peace of mind, which is often the most important aspect of the sale. We feel that if a buyer feels like the seller is trying to hide something, or they're not being totally clear about something, it can make negotiating very, very tough, especially if the if the buyer really likes the house and they really want the house, but they're hung up on this issue, and there's sometimes it's a bit of a game, and it needs to be everybody needs to be transparent.
For sure, and if it's a game, everybody needs to play by the rules as well, I guess there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, now we're going to move on to private versus listing with an agent. Now, maybe you could tell us a little bit about why people should list with an agent as opposed to your own private sale that people do at times.
Well, from a property disclosure perspective, when putting a home up for sale privately, there's no disclosure statement form.
Oh, wow.
This is kind of scary when you consider potential problems that can arise when purchasing a home. People, will tell you all the good things about the home, but sometimes they forgot that their foundation leaks in spring when it rains a lot.
Oh, yes.
Problems that people have with homes are sometimes not year-round either. And a buyer or home inspector may not see the problem depending on the time of year it's for sale. So in some cases, even though it's put up privately, they do request a home inspection. But like I said, the home inspector may not see that issue right then and there.
For sure. Because certain things would only take place during certain times of the year, and out of sight, out of mind. If it's something that happens in the winter and it's the summertime, it may not be on the person's mind.
Absolutely. Like us as agents, we will ask the questions to the seller that pinpoints potential problems. If they've had any type of issue, it's asked about on the statement. This puts the onus on the seller to be upfront about their property. If they are asked, they will most times tell us. So, we also assist buyers in getting the home inspections arranged. Sometimes when going through properties, we notice things, potential buyers notice things that the seller may not notice. I'm sure Steve, when you live in a property for a long time, a problem may not be a problem after a little while.
That's right.
It becomes normal. So in that case, it can be brought to the attention of the seller and to a home inspector to have a look at it.
Yes, for sure, because sometimes, there are certain little quirks about the place you may live in, and which may look like a problem or be considered a problem to just about everybody else, but because you're used to living in it and dealing with it, it's not a problem in your own mind, that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah, I'm guilty of that.
Yes, for sure. I think,
right now,
Yeah, I think we all are. Yeah, there's a few
Absolutely.
things wrong with my place that people will consider wrong, but I just consider, that's just part of living there.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And that actually brings us just about to the end of another show here, another RE/MAX Realty Check in the books. And anything you'd like to say in closing, Dwayne?
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come and have a chat with you today.
Anytime.
And, if you're thinking about buying or selling, I just encourage you to get a market evaluation and call your RE/MAX agent today, whether it be in Corner Brook, Deer Lake, Stephenville, or anywhere.
Thank you very much there, Dwayne. And yes, make sure you tune in again next week. We'll be back once again with another edition of the RE/MAX Realty Check right here and only on CFCB.